What's good, everyone? This is Monaro and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to go over chapters 35 to 40. I hope you enjoy. Ned finds Littlefinger in the common room of Shataya's brothel talking with an elegant, black-skinned woman. His guardsman, Heward, is gambling for the removal of clothes with a whore while Jory Cassell watches from the window. Ned declares his business done, and Jory moves to bring the horses around while Littlefinger makes a joke about what part of the king's anatomy the hand of the king might be filling in for in a brothel. In no mood for Littlefinger's jokes, Ned gruffly declares he is no longer the hand. Outside, it is raining as they mount up. As they ride the deserted streets, Littlefinger tells Ned that he is considering buying the brothel because brothels make much sounder investments than ships. They do not sink, and pirates pay good coin like everyone else. As they ride back toward the Red Keep in the rain, Ned remembers the night his sister Lyanna was betrothed to Robert. Lyanna had told him that Robert would never keep to one bed. Ned, who had already held Robert's first bastard daughter, assured her that Robert was a good man who would love her with all his heart. Lyanna responded that one could not change a man's nature. After what he has seen this night, Ned cannot say his sister was wrong. Ned's business at Shataya's brothel was to meet the prostitute with Robert's bastard daughter named Bara. The child resembled Robert, and the girl was proud to show him that the baby had the king's nose and hair. Ned still remembers that Robert's firstborn had the same hair. The girl asked him to tell Robert how beautiful their daughter is, that she had not been with anyone else, and that she is waiting for him. Eddard vowed that she and the child would be well cared for. As he rides, Ned reflects that he is cursed to always keep his promises, while Robert can swear undying love and forget it by the morning. Ned thinks about Jon Snow and wonders why the gods give men such lust only to frown on bastards. Ned then asks Littlefinger about Robert's bastards. Littlefinger says he does not know exactly how many there are. He goes on to speak in detail about Robert's acknowledged bastard, Edric Storm, the son of a cousin to the king's sister-in-law. Littlefinger also speaks of a rumored pair of twins of a serving maid at Casterly Rock, which Cersei had killed. Ned is surprised that Robert would stand by and let such a thing happen, but then recalls that Robert seems to have grown adept at shutting his eyes. Ned asks why Jon Arryn was suddenly taking such an interest in Robert's bastards. Littlefinger suggests that maybe Robert asked him to. Ned declares that Jon Arryn was killed for something more than that. Littlefinger says scornfully that maybe Lord Arryn had to be silenced for discovering Robert had bastard children, scoffing that the next man might be audacious enough to claim the sun rises in the east. Ned thinks of Rhaegar Targaryen for the first time in years and wonders if the Dragon Prince frequented brothels. Somehow, he thinks not. Suddenly, they are surrounded by at least 20 Lannister guardsmen. Jaime Lannister rides up and declares that he is looking for his brother, who apparently had some trouble on the road. Ned tells him that Catelyn took Tyrion prisoner to answer for his crimes. This causes Littlefinger to groan in dismay, and Jaime moves forward and draws his sword. Jaime demands that Ned show his steel, declaring that he will butcher Ned, but prefers it if Ned will fight back. Jaime then suggests Littlefinger leave if he does not want blood on his expensive clothes. Littlefinger needs no urging, but assures Ned that he will bring the city watch. The Stark guardsmen have drawn their swords, but it is 3 against 20. So Ned reminds Jaime that if he dies, Catelyn will kill Tyrion. Jaime doesn't believe him but is unwilling to chance it, so he tells his men not to harm Ned. Yet Jaime refuses to leave Ned entirely unchastened, so he orders Ned's guardsmen killed. Ned and his men are quickly overwhelmed, and Heward and Weil are cut down. Jory manages to break free but returns almost immediately and is killed. In the confusion, Ned's horse slips and falls, and Ned is blinded by the pain of his leg breaking. When he opens his eyes, Ned drags himself through the mud. When Littlefinger and the gold cloaks finally arrive, they find him cradling Jory's dead body. He is returned in horrid pain to the Tower of the Hand, where Grand Maester Pycelle attends to his injury. The Khalasar enters Vaes Dothrak under the Mother of Mountains and proceeds along the God's Way, passing under the gigantic horse gate, a pair of rearing bronze stallions whose hooves meet 100 feet up. Daenerys wonders why Vaes Dothrak needs a gate when it appears to have no walls, no buildings, and no people. All that Daenerys can see are ancient monuments that the Dothraki have sacked over the centuries in the grass on either side of the God's Way. As she looks back at her brother Viserys, who is now mounted again, Daenerys thinks back on the events of the long ride east. After the incident on the Dothraki Sea, Viserys had been forced to walk, and the Dothraki had named him Khal Rey Mar, the Sore-Foot King. Viserys did not realize that he was being mocked when he accepted a ride in a cart from Khal Drogo, which earned him another name, Khal Rhagat, the Cart King. Daenerys had begged Ser Jorah not to tell Viserys the truth, and only after much pleading had she convinced Drogo to allow Viserys to ride again. Now, as they ride past the broke idols of fallen cities, Viserys tells Daenerys that all the Dothraki savages can do is steal things better men have built and kill, which is all he needs them for. He goes on to say the Dothraki cannot speak the language of civilized men, and then states that he is tired of waiting for Drogo to give him his army. Ser Jorah tells Viserys that Drogo will honor his promise in his own time. Fortunately, few of the Dothraki can understand the common tongue. After Viserys leaves, Ser Jorah explains that the Dothraki are not merchants and do not trade, despite what Viserys thinks. Khal Drogo considers Daenerys a gift and will eventually give a gift in return. Daenerys points out that it is not right to make her brother wait, and says Viserys believes he can sweep the Seven Kingdoms with 10,000 Dothraki. Ser Jorah snorts that Viserys could not sweep a table with 10,000 brooms. Daenerys asks whether it would be possible for someone stronger than Viserys. Ser Jorah tells her that when he first came to Essos, he saw the Dothraki as half-naked barbarians and believed that 1,000 good knights could put 100 times as many Dothraki to flight. Now he is not so sure. The Dothraki are better riders. Their bows, wielded from horseback, have a longer range, and there are many of them. Drogo alone commands 40,000 men, the same number that Rhaegar brought to the Battle of the Trident, and only a tenth of Rhaegar's men were knights. When Rhaegar died, many fled the field, and such a rabble would not last against 40,000 Dothraki. However, the Dothraki have no patience for siegecraft, and if the armies of Westeros stay behind their castle walls, they could hold out forever. Robert Baratheon might be a fool enough to give them battle, but the men around him are not. Stannis Baratheon, Tywin Lannister, and Eddard Stark. The way he always says the last name leads Daenerys to ask if Ser Jorah hates the man. Ser Jorah replies that Eddard Stark took everything he loved from him for a few lice-ridden poachers and his precious honor. They arrive at the city, which is both the largest and the smallest Daenerys had ever seen. It sprawls ancient, arrogant, and empty across the plain. The buildings are all different. Ser Jorah explains that they are built by slaves in the fashion they were familiar with. He also explains that the only permanent residents are the Dosh-Khaleen, the widows of all the Khals who have come before. Yet Vaes Dothrak is large enough to house all the Khalasars if they should all return at once, as prophesied. When they neared the eastern market and dismounted, each rider gives up all weapons to a waiting slave, for in Vaes Dothrak no man may carry steel or spill blood. The palace of Khal Drogo is a massive feasting hall of rough-hewn logs that make a wall 40 feet tall, with a roof of silk surrounded by horse yards and hundreds of earthen houses. Daenerys is met by Kaholo, one of Khal Drogo's blood riders, who informs her that Drogo must ascend the Mother of Mountains that night to sacrifice for his safe return. As she speaks to Kaholo, Daenerys recalls that the Khal's 3 blood riders are his sworn brothers who share everything with him except his horses. Daenerys is glad that Drogo does not hold to the tradition of sharing her with his blood riders because some of them frighten her. Blood riders are bound to their Khal for life and die when he dies, living only long enough to avenge him if required. Daenerys finds herself wishing her father was guarded by such men, remembering the stories of the Kingslayer who murdered her father and Sir Barristan Selmy who went over to the usurper. Daenerys, who is tiring easily as her child grows, is looking forward to a night of rest. She is led to one of the hollow hills that has been prepared for her. She decides to give her brother his gifts tonight. She has prepared Viserys several sets of clothes that she hopes will help him earn the respect of the Dothraki. She also intends the gifts as a way of apologizing for shaming him. Daenerys orders Doreah to invite him to supper and Irri to go to the market to buy something other than horse meat, which Viserys hates. Viserys soon arrives, dragging Doreah by the arm, furious that Daenerys would presume to give him commands. Daenerys attempts to explain that Doreah misspoke, then shows Viserys the clothes she had made for him. Viserys only sneers at the clothes, calling them Dothraki rags. Her brother goes on to ridicule her for presuming to dress him and suggests spitefully that next Daenerys will want to braid his hair. Daenerys declares that he has no right to a braid because he has won no victories. Viserys grabs her by the arm, hurting her, and for a moment Daenerys is a scared little girl again. Then she grabs hold of the first thing she touches, a medallion belt she meant to give Viserys, and swings it with all her strength. The belt hits her brother full in the face and leaves a deep cut. Daenerys tells Viserys to leave and pray that Drogo does not hear of this. Viserys leaves in a fury, telling her that when he comes into his kingdom, she will regret this day. Bran is finally getting to ride outside of the castle in the oversized saddle that Tyrion Lannister designed for him. He has been riding a horse he named Dancer in the yard for the past fortnight, getting bolder each time. With his legs unable to grip, the swaying motion of the horse makes him unsteady at first, but the straps around his chest and thighs prevent him from falling. Soon Bran gets into the rhythm, and his anxiety fades into a tremulous smile. Bran would have preferred to have gone out with just Robb, but neither Maester Luwin nor the new captain of the guard, Hallis Mullen, would allow it. The party includes Robb, Joseph, the Master of Horse, Theon Greyjoy, Maester Luwin, and the direwolves Summer and Greywind. As they pass through the village, Theon calls out to 2 serving wenches by the alehouse. One blushes, and Theon declares to Robb that she squirms like a weasel in bed, but blushes if you say anything to her in the street. Before Theon can continue his story, Robb insists he not talk about such things around Bran. Bran notes that Robb seems to admire Theon, but Bran has never warmed to him. Bran asks to go faster, and Robb agrees and spurs his own horse. Bran brings Dancer to a gallop and catches up to Robb at the edge of the Wolf's Wood. Bran exclaims his excitement at being able to ride, and Robb smiles, but Bran can tell something is bothering his brother. Robb notes that something is bothering the direwolves as well, before admitting there was a raven the night before. The news recently from the ravens had not been good. Uncle Benjen has still not been found, and their mother has taken Tyrion Lannister captive. Bran remembers Robb sending riders with commands throughout the north. Nobody had told him what was happening, but Bran knew it was about the Lannisters and not good. There is something about the Lannisters that Bran knows he ought to remember, but when he tries to think what it is, he becomes dizzy and his stomach clenches. Robb explains that the message from Alan in King's Landing Heward, Weil, and Jory Cassell have been murdered by the Kingslayer. Bran cannot understand why anyone would kill Jory, whom he remembers chasing him across the roofs of Winterfell. Robb continues solemnly that their father's leg was shattered in the fight, and he has not woken since. Robb promises Bran that he will not let this be forgotten. Theon advises Robb to call the banners. Bran exclaims that only the Lord can call the banners, but Theon replies that if Eddard dies, Robb is Lord of Winterfell. Robb notes to Bran that the honor of the North is in his hands. Bran asks if Maester Luwin agrees with calling the banners, and Theon calls the Maester as timid as an old woman. Bran tells Robb that their father and mother both listen to the Maester's counsel. Robb states that he listens to everyone. The joy of the ride is over, and Bran asks if they can go back because he is cold. Robb states that they first need to find the wolves, and the brothers ride into the Wolfswood while Theon falls back to talk with the guardsmen. Bran enjoys riding his horse in the woods while Theon and the guardsmen fall farther behind when they come to a stream. Robb asks Bran what is troubling him. Bran admits that he remembers Jory bringing them here to fish with Jon Snow. Bran asks if they will ever see Jon again, and Robb reminds him that even Uncle Benjen came to visit. Then the wolves howl, and Robb rides off to get them, asking Bran to stay there. Bran is getting anxious about the others when 4 ragged men and 2 women surround him. Bran can tell that they were neither foresters nor farmers, and suddenly he remembers how richly he is dressed. The biggest man asks if he is lost, and Bran says that his guard will be along shortly. Bran, seeing their clothes, believes that the rags could be the black of the Night's Watch. He remembers that his father said deserters are dangerous because they know their life is forfeit. The outlaws demand his silver pin and his horse. Bran tries to explain that he cannot dismount. They do not believe him. The big man, whom the others call Stiv, grabs the reins before Bran thinks of turning and riding off. Finally, the tall woman, Osha, sees the straps. The short woman named Holly asks if he is a cripple. Angered, Bran declares that he is Brandon Stark and that they had better let go of his horse or they will be dead. With Bran's arrogant outburst, the gaunt man named Wallen proclaims that only a Stark would threaten when a smarter man would beg. Holly tells the others to cut off his cock and stuff it in his mouth. Osha tells Holly that she is as stupid as she is ugly. Mance Rayder will pay well for a kinsman of Benjen Stark. Stiv states that he does not want to go back to the White Walkers and cuts the strap off Bran's saddle, cutting Bran's leg in the process. Bran feels nothing but starts to feel lightheaded. Suddenly, Robb calls out for them to surrender. Bran sees that Robb is still mounted, with the body of an elk over the back of his horse. The outlaws only laugh and point out that Robb, who is outnumbered, should surrender. Then the direwolves appear at Robb's whistle. Robb charges, killing one of the men and riding down Osha when she overextends with her spear. At the same time, Grey Wind kills Wallen and the other unnamed man, while Summer tears open Holly's belly. Now facing Robb and the direwolves alone, Stiv finishes cutting Bran free, hauls him off the saddle, and holds his knife to Bran's throat. Stiv tells Robb to drop his sword, and Robb slowly complies. Then Stiv tells Robb to call the direwolves off, which Robb does. Bran can see that Osha is still alive. Stiv commands Osha to kill the wolves, but she refuses to go anywhere near them. Instead, Stiv orders Robb to kill the wolves. Bran screams no, knowing that they will be defenseless without the wolves. Suddenly, an arrow from Theon Greyjoy's bow bursts through Stiv's chest, and the man collapses into the stream. The Stark guardsmen appear, and Osha throws down her spear and surrenders. The guardsmen grow pale, and some even vomit when they see the carnage. Theon, ever smiling, is proud of his shot, but Robb scolds him for taking such a chance with Bran's life. He might have missed, or the knife could have slipped. Then Robb turns on the guardsmen, asking where they were. They explain that at first they were waiting for Maester Lewin, and Theon admits he led them off to hunt a turkey. Robb is angrier than Bran has ever seen him. As Mr. Lewin examines Bran's wounds, he points out to Robb that two of the attackers wear the black of the Night's Watch. Robb orders their heads cut off for transport back to the Wall, but orders the bodies left unburied. The question of what to do with Osha comes up. The woman drops to her knees to beg Robb to spare her, proclaiming that she will serve him. When Robb asks what use he might have for an oath breaker, Osha insists that, as a wildling, she broke no oaths. Theon suggests that they give her to the wolves, which causes Osha to shudder, and even some guardsmen to look queasy. Maester Lewin advises they question her, so Robb orders her bound and brought back to Winterfell. The ugly and sadistic jailer Mord brings beans for Tyrion, who is in one of the eerie sky cells. As always, when Tyrion reaches for the plate, the oaf pulls it away and holds it over the edge of the cell, telling Tyrion to come get it. Tyrion is unwilling to step that close to the edge, and Mord lets the plate fall. Tyrion curses Mord, who gives him a kick before he leaves. Tyrion crawls to the corner to huddle under a thin blanket that has replaced the shadow-skin cloak stolen by Mord. Tyrion reflects that he would gladly trade the cold and open sky cell for the darkest pit in Casterly Rock. When Mord placed Tyrion in the cell, he promised that sooner or later Tyrion would fly. To make things worse, the floor slants towards the opening, making Tyrion afraid to sleep, lest he slip towards the edge. Tyrion remembers when Lysa Arryn announced to her court that Tyrion had slain Jon Arryn, the Hand of the King. That was when Tyrion put his foot in it, remarking, "Oh, did I kill him too?" He went on to wonder aloud when he would have had enough time to do all this killing. He should have been silent, but he had been in a foul mood, having been humiliated by having to be carried the last leg of the climb to the Eyrie by Bran. Lysa warned him about where he was, but he threatened them with the wrath of Jaime Lannister all the same. He even declared his threat a promise and drove sickly young Lord Robert Arryn into a frenzy. It was only the intervention of Catelyn Stark that saved him from being made to fly when she insisted that Tyrion was her prisoner. Then he was sent to the sky cells. Tyrion thought that they would not dare kill him out of hand, but he was not so sure. He is getting weaker every day, and it is only a matter of time before Mord's kicks do him serious harm. He is sure that his father will have sent riders out by now, and Jaime might already be leading an army to rescue him. Cersei might get King Robert to sit in judgment himself, which even Eddard Stark could not object to. Tyrion is sure he can win a trial since the Starks have no proof. Tyrion wonders which of his siblings sent the footpad to kill Bran Stark, and if they also conspired in the death of Jon Arryn. If Arryn was murdered, it was subtly done, whereas sending a footpad to kill Bran was unbelievably clumsy. This leads Tyrion to wonder if there is some other force involved that has made him a pawn. Tyrion hates being a pawn. Tyrion decides that he must free himself, and soon. He has no chance of overpowering Mord, so he must talk himself out. Tyrion hammers on the door, yelling for Mord. Mord is furious that Tyrion is making noise. Tyrion, remembering not to show fear, asks if Mord would like to be rich. Mord only strikes him with a leather strap. It takes a great deal of talking about Lannister gold while getting slapped before Mord finally starts to listen. Tyrion explains that although she relieved him of his purse, Catelyn Stark would never rob him. Therefore, the gold is still his. Tyrion promises all of his gold to Mord in exchange for Mord telling Lysa Arryn that he wishes to confess his crimes. Tyrion even goes so far as to lie that his brother Jaime wears solid gold plate armor. It is actually gilded steel, but Mord would never know the difference. When Tyrion senses Mord's suspicion, he offers to write down the deal, and Mord brings him a pen and paper. Tyrion is shivering in his sleep when Servardus Egan arrives to bring him to Lysa. Before he leaves, Tyrion asks Mord for his shadowskin cloak, and Servardus orders the unhappy jailer to hand it over. The high hall is filled with knights and retainers to hear his confession. Tyrion is happy to see that young Lord Robert is missing from the high throne. Tyrion is also pleased to see Bran and Marillion among the witnesses. With the singer present, whatever happens will not remain a secret. Lysa comments to her sister that the sky cells always break prisoners, but Catelyn only says that Tyrion does not appear broken to her. Tyrion declares to himself that the time has come to roll the dice. He starts by declaring himself a vile little man and that his crimes and sins are beyond counting. Whoring, gambling, wishing his own father and sister dead, and speaking ill of the royal court. Soon he is interrupted by a furious Lysa, and Catelyn tells him pointedly that he is there to confess to the attempted murder of Bran Stark and the murder of Jon Arryn. Tyrion merely replies that he cannot confess to those crimes because he is innocent. Lysa orders Tyrion taken back to a smaller sky cell with a steeper floor. Before he can be taken, Tyrion asks loudly if this is how justice is done in the Vale. He is accused of crimes, he denies them, and so he is thrown into a cell. He makes sure to show his bruised face to the crowd. Tyrion demands a trial where he can defend himself and be judged by the gods and men. Lysa states that if Tyrion is found guilty, he will go through the moon door, which leads only to a fatal plunge to the mountainside below. Catelyn tells Lysa that this is unwise. Lysa states that her son will hear and judge Tyrion's trial. Tyrion remembers Lord Robert stating that he wanted to see him fly. Tyrion demands a trial by combat, which fills the hall with derisive laughter. There are shots throughout the hall, with most men asking to be given the honor of champion Lysa Arryn's cause. Lysa declares that Servardus Egan, the only silent man, will be her champion. Servardus sinks to one knee, but declines the honor, insisting that to slaughter such a defenseless man would be shameful. Tyrion is quick to agree, demanding a champion the same as Lysa and naming her brother Jaime. When Lysa refuses, Tyrion's choice on the grounds that Jaime is hundreds of leagues away, Tyrion turns to Marillion to insist that when he makes a ballad of these proceedings, he be sure to mention that Tyrion was denied a champion and sent bruised and hobbling against Lysa's finest knight. Lysa tells him to name another champion. For a moment, no one moves, and Tyrion wonders if he has made a terrible mistake. Then there is a stirring in the back of the chamber, and Bran calls out that he will stand as champion for Tyrion. Under the influence of the milk of the poppy, Ned dreams an old dream of the showdown at the Tower of Joy. In the dream, as it was in life, his friends ride with him: Howland Reed, Lord Willem Dustin, Ethan Glover, Martin Cassell, Theo Wool, and Sir Mark Riswell. They were 7 facing 3, but these 3 were men of the Kingsguard and living legends: Lord Commander Sir Gerald Hightower, Sir Arthur Dane, the Sword of the Morning, and Sir Oswell Went. Ned had looked for them on the Trident, and at the sack of King's Landing, and at the siege of Storm's End, but found them guarding this tower near the Red Mountains of Dorne. In spite of Rhaegar's death, they refused to bend the knee. By the end, only Ned and Howland Reed remain alive. Ned is awoken from the dream in the midst of making a promise to his dying sister Lyanna after the battle. Vayon Poole is calling, and this wakes Ned. He is informed that it has been 6 days, and King Robert has commanded that Ned attend him when he wakes. Ned replies that he is too weak, but that he would be pleased to receive the king in his room. When Ned asks for his captain of the guard, remembering that Jory is dead, Alan appears. He tells Ned that Jaime Lannister has left King's Landing, that extra guards have been put on, that his daughters have been with him every day, and that Jory, Heward, and Weil have been given to the Silent Sisters to be sent north to Winterfell. Ned remembers that Jory's father, Martin Cassell, who was one of his 7 at the Tower of Joy, was buried in the Dornish marshes with the others. That takes Ned back to his dream. He does not think it bodes well for him to dream that dream now. It is then that Poole announces the arrival of both Robert and Cersei. Ned does not think it bodes well that Cersei has come either. Ned orders that they be sent in and that the others leave, as what is to be said should be kept secret. When Robert asks if Ned knows what his wife has done, Ned states that Catelyn is blameless since she took action on his behalf and under his authority as Hand of the King. The king tells Ned he is unhappy. The king's hand is supposed to keep the peace, but 7 men are dead. Cersei corrects this to 8 as a Lannister guardsman recently died of his wounds. Robert declares that he will not tolerate it and demands that Ned command Tyrion's release and make peace with Jaime. Ned angrily replies that 3 of his men were butchered in front of his eyes because Jaime wished to chastise him. Cersei leaps to Jaime's defense, accusing Ned and his men of attacking Jaime while returning drunk from a brothel. Ned calmly reminds Robert that he should know him better than that, and that Littlefinger will confirm his story. Robert replies that Littlefinger only said that they had been returning from a brothel. Ned angrily informs Robert that he was at the brothel to visit Robert's bastard daughter. When Robert criticizes the girl's choice of name, Ned has a hard time keeping his temper as he demands to know how one could expect a 15-year-old whore to have better sense. He then tells Robert that the girl is in love with him. Ned asks for Robert's leave to bring Jaime back to face justice. Robert tells him to leave it alone and make peace with Jaime. Ned declares that if that is Robert's notion of justice, he is pleased he is no longer his hand. Cersei declares, "If any man had dared speak to a Targaryen as he has spoken to you," Robert cuts her off by asking angrily if she mistook him for Ares. Cersei presses on regardless, telling Robert that she took him for a king, that Jaime and Tyrion are his brothers by marriage, and that Ned dishonors them all by driving off one brother and abducting the other. She steps too far, however, when she declares that Robert should be the one in skirts and her in armor. Robert's face goes purple with rage, and he lashes out with a blow to Cersei's face that knocks her to the floor. Cersei remarks that she will wear the bruise as a badge of honor before she is escorted out by Sir Meryn Trant. Robert, in misery, asks Ned if he sees what Cersei does to him. He continues that he should not have hit her, but says he does not know how to fight someone you cannot hit. Robert then declares that Rhaegar won. Rhaegar has Lyanna and he has Cersei. Ned tells Robert that they need to talk, but Robert is sick of talk and intends to hunt on the morrow. Whatever Ned wants to tell him can wait until he returns. When Ned reminds Robert that by then he will have departed for Winterfell as commanded, Robert throws the Hand's badge of office onto the bed and forbids Ned to leave. Ned asks about Daenerys Targaryen and is told that it is done. Ned continues by asking why Robert wants him as Hand if he will not listen to his advice. Robert states that somebody has to run the kingdom. As he leaves, Robert swears that if Ned resigns again, he will pin the badge on Jaime Lannister. Catelyn watches dawn break over the Eyrie. Below is the waterfall called Alyssa's Tears, named after a woman who had seen her husband, brothers, and all her children slain, but never shed a tear. Catelyn wonders how large a waterfall her own tears will make when she dies. She asks, and Sir Roderick continues with his news. Sir Jaime Lannister is gathering an army at Casterly Rock. Catelyn's brother Edmure writes that he has commanded Lords Vance and Piper to guard the pass below the Golden Tooth. Edmure's letter goes on to declare that he will yield no foot to Tully land without soaking it in Lannister blood. Catelyn is in a foul mood and asks why the letter makes no mention of their father, the Lord of Riverrun, who must be very sick to give the defense over to Edmure. When Catelyn says that she should have been woken immediately when the letter arrived, Sir Roderick explains that Lysa thought it was better to let her sleep. He also mentions that her sister plans to speak with her after the combat. Catelyn declares the combat a mummer's farce, angry that Lysa cannot see Tyrion Lannister has tricked her. In Catelyn's opinion, it is past time that she and Sir Roderick leave for Winterfell, planning to take a ship north from Gulltown. Sir Roderick pales at the thought of another sea voyage. As the servants dress her, Catelyn hopes that she can talk to her sister before the duel. The shy girl Catelyn knew at Riverrun has grown into a vain and inconstant woman. When the message came that Tyrion wanted to confess, Catelyn had tried to convince Lysa to talk to the dwarf in private, but her sister insisted on a public show. As they come to the doors of Lysa's apartment, Sir Brynden the Blackfish is coming out. He is angry that Lysa has refused to grant him 1,000 men to aid the defense of the Riverlands. He declares that he has resigned as Knight of the Bloody Gate and will go alone. Concerned about her uncle traveling the high road alone, Catelyn suggests he return to Winterfell with them and receive his 1,000 men from her. Sir Brynden agrees, and Catelyn and Sir Roderick enter Lysa's apartment. Lysa's apartment overlooks a grassy area scattered with statues, the remnants of a failed attempt to plant a godswood, where the duel will take place. An elegant-looking Lysa is holding court on the terrace, surrounded by her many suitors. The young Lord Robert is in a chair on an elevated platform being entertained by a puppeteer. Catelyn attempts to explain to Lysa that they have nothing to gain by executing Tyrion Lannister and everything to lose if his champion should succeed. Lysa and her suitors insist that any knight is superior to a common sellsword like Bran. Having seen Bran fight on the high road, Catelyn is much less certain. Trying another approach, Catelyn argues that the Lannisters, especially Jaime Lannister, will not be satisfied that they had a trial before executing Tyrion. Lyn Corbray insists that Tyrion's head will serve as a warning to the Lannisters, but Lysa insists that her son wants to see Tyrion fly as if it settles the matter. Catelyn attempts one final time to stop the trial by claiming Tyrion is her prisoner. Lysa merely rants that Tyrion killed her husband and she means to see him pay. Sir Roderick asks Catelyn quietly if she truly thinks Tyrion did it. She states that she believes the Lannisters murdered Jon Arryn, but she cannot say whether it was Cersei, Jaime, or Tyrion. Lysa named Cersei in her letter, but now she seems certain it was Tyrion, perhaps because she has Tyrion as her captive. Sir Roderick agrees that poison could be the work of Tyrion or Cersei, but Jaime is too fond of blood to have used poison. Catelyn wonders how else they could have made it to look a natural death. When Catelyn hears her nephew shriek in delight at the antics of the puppets, she states that the boy is too undisciplined. He will never be strong enough to rule unless he is taken away from Lysa. Maester Coleman, having overheard this, pipes in that Jon Arryn agreed and was planning to send the boy to Dragonstone. Catelyn corrects him that it was Casterly Rock, but the Maester insists it was Dragonstone. Tyrion Lannister is led forward, and Robert asks if he can make him fly. The two champions appear from either side of the garden. Sir Vardis Egan is armored in plate from head to toe with a narrow slit for vision. Bran looks almost half naked by comparison, wearing only a half helm, a mail coif, and ringmail over boiled leather. However, Catelyn notices that Bran is 15 years younger and half a hand taller with a greater reach than Sir Vardis. The Septon calls upon the gods before making a hasty departure. Robert is impatient for the fight to start. The knight's heavy kite shield is strapped to his arm by a squire. When offered a shield, Bran refuses. The knight is handed an elegant double-edged sword that Lysa pronounced belonged to Jon Arryn for ceremonial occasions. Lysa explains that she thinks it is only fitting that Ser Vardis avenge Lord Aaron with his own blade, but Catelyn notices that Ser Vardis shows some discomfort with the strange sword. Finally, Robert is allowed to initiate the fight. After an initial probing exchange, Bran starts to leap away from the knights' advances. The crowd starts declaring that Bran is craven, but Sir Roderick tells Catelyn that Bran is trying to tire the knight. As she watches the fight, Catelyn remembers the duel between Brandon Stark and Peter Baelish. When Brandon saw the limited armor Peter was wearing, he took off most of his own armor. Peter had begged her for a favor, but her father had promised her to Brandon. As she had given the favor to Brandon, Catelyn had begged him to not kill Peter, and he had agreed. The fight was ended quickly with a deep cut to Peter's ribs, which Catelyn was sure was fatal. That was the last time she had seen Peter until King's Landing. When Catelyn returns her attention to the fight, she can tell Bran is quicker. Robert complains that the combatants are not fighting properly, but his mother assures him that the sellsword cannot run all day. Eventually, Ser Vardis is addled by a fall and loses his sight of Bran because of his narrow visor. Bran uses this opportunity to place a serious blow to the knight's elbow. Now the knight's parries begin to grow slower and slower, and Bran's attacks with more energy. Blind to the fact that Ser Vardis is losing, Lysa calls for him to finish his sellsword as if he were delaying the end on purpose. The knight charges and Bran almost loses his balance, but manages to jump back from the blow and push a statue onto the knight. With Ser Vardis being pinned under the fallen statue, Bran delivers the killing blow and a silence falls over the crowd. Robert asks if it is over, and Lysa is forced to admit it is. Robert then asks if he can make the little man fly, and Tyrion joyfully says, "Not this little man." When Lysa makes a thinly veiled threat to execute Tyrion anyway, the dwarf asks if Lysa remembers House Aaron's words as high as honor. Robert insists that he wants to make Tyrion fly, but Lysa is forced to admit that the gods have proclaimed Tyrion innocent. She orders Tyrion and Bran escorted to the Bloody Gate and provided with supplies, but they must take the high road alone. Everyone in the court recognizes the proclamation as another sort of death sentence. Tyrion favors Lysa with a mocking bow, saying he and Bran already know the way. Well, that's it, everyone. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please leave them down in the comments below. I will be doing a Q&A at the end of the month for the entire book, so please leave your questions down below so that I can compile them if you want them answered. Again, thank you so much for stopping by. Please give it a thumbs up if you liked it, and please subscribe to come back for more. Thanks again. Bye.